Hello, my name's Sean Moran, and I'm here with my colleague Orison Carlile. Hello, Orison.
Hello, Sean.
And we're going to talk about academic writing. Orison, first of all, perhaps you could give us an indication as to the differences between academic writing and other kinds of writing.
Well, most people write emails, for example, or letters or notes themselves. That sort of random type of writing where it doesn't matter how you organise your thoughts, you just write them as they come to you. But in academic writing, it's more organised writing, more structured.
How would you go about structuring a piece of writing? How can you signpost things for the reader?
Well, the main thing in structuring writing is to realise that every paragraph will probably have a certain point to make. And once you've made your point, you then try to support that.
How do you support these points other than just by stating them?
Well, you need to give some sort of evidence. Now, the evidence could be precedent from before, or it could be some logical argument, or, for example, it could be examples of it.
How do you mean precedent, or using somebody else's work? How would you go about doing that?
Well, this is absolutely central to academic writing, because academic writing is part of a sort of a game that's played, and you need to join the game and you need to play the rules, and you're trying to join an ongoing conversation which has already been going on, so you need to see what was said before so you know what to say in your edition.
That's interesting. Now, before you make your comment, you need to say what other people have said on this topic. Do you just put them into your own words, or what's the best way of doing that?
Well, no. You need to understand, first of all, what the conversation is. That takes a while. The example I give is that when you're at a party, you hover at the edge of a group of people as they talk until you know what they're talking about, and then you can put in your spoke. So you need to read around the topic and read the literature, read some summary articles describing the other people until you get to know what the conversation is.
Okay, now once you've got to know it, how do you actually use somebody else's words? Because I think this is very important in academic writing. How do you use the words of someone other than yourself?
Well, you'll eventually come across someone with whom you agree strongly. And in their writing, they may have a sentence or an expression which couldn't be improved on, which just says it exactly the right way. Now, if it's beautifully spoken, beautifully said, then you will say, well, I agree with Sean Moran in his article when he said whatever, the exact words, a very short little phrase.
Quotation, in other words.
Quotation. And if I were quoting that, of course, I would have to have the year of publication and the page upon which that particular little expression occurred. I would have to do that because I may have quoted it out of context. The bit before it and the bit after it mightn't have been exactly that. So I would have to give you the chance to see for yourself.
So the reader can go back to the original work and see exactly what the writer actually said.
Yes. I mean, for example, you could quote the Bible when it says, "There is no God." Now, if the person goes back to
it really says in the Bible, there is no God.
I can quote the Bible. The Bible says, "There is no God." Right?
Wow.
Yeah. Now, if I give you the page reference and you go back to look it up, you will see that the Bible says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God."
I see. Now, that's very different from just boldly stating that there is no God.
Yes, that's why you have to give the page, to give them the right to see that you were being fair in your quote, because I was being unfair in my quote when I said there is no God.
Okay, now maybe you can just tell us exactly how, if you have, say, a 10-word sentence from a writer and you want to use this, how exactly do you put that? How do you incorporate that into your own writing?
Well, it's important to take ownership yourself of the ideas and not just to be quoting. You have to evaluate what is being said. One of the hallmarks of academic writing isn't just that you report what you read. You have to filter it through your own understanding.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment because I do agree, and this is worth exploring, but maybe just for the moment, what are the mechanics? How do you literally set out that 10-word sentence and quote it word for word in your own writing?
There are two ways of going about it. You can start with your point and then add the quote, or you can start with a quote and then make your point.
How do you make it clear to the reader that this is a quote and not just more of your own words?
Or you would have to have it in quotation marks, and you'd have to have the name of the author with the year of publication and the page of the quotation as well.
You put the name and the year and the page in brackets, presumably?
Yes. Now, there are two ways of doing that. Sometimes the name of the author is part of the sentence. So you would say, as Moran, then it'd have the bracket and the year of publication. So Moran would be part of the sentence. As Moran, bracket 1999, said, blah, blah, blah. And in which case the bracket is only around the year. But if I just gave the whole sentence, which was finished, and then I was mentioning who wrote it, I'd put bracket Moran, comma, year and page. Sometimes the author, in other words, is part of the sentence that you're talking about, and sometimes the author is part of the reference.
Okay, what if I decide not to do this, that I don't want to be bothered with all this scholarly nicety, and I just want to just include these ideas and write it all in continuous prose? Would that lead to any problems for me?
Oh yes, it would, because the idea might be Moran's as well. So that even though it's not an exact quote, if you just use a paraphrase or you put it in your own words, it's still the author's idea that you're using, and you would have to reference the source of that idea if it wasn't originally your own idea.
So even if you put it into your own words, the fact that it's someone else's idea means that you must reference it properly?
Yes, you reference the idea as well as the words, yes.
And if you don't?
You're plagiarizing, which is immoral, not good academic practice, just plain wrong.
Not fattening, though?
No. But it would certainly shorten your academic career.
Very good. Okay, now we can maybe come on to the other point you made, which is we're not just giving people's views, but we are responding to them in some critical way.
Oh yes, do you mean your own views, your opinions, or your arguments?
No, these are the views from other authors.
From other authors. Well, you see, if you're trying to prove that you're an academic or to do academic writing, what you're really trying to display is a quality of mind. You're trying to show that you think clearly and you analyse what is being said to you. So you can show that by the way you describe and critique and comment on the people that you are quoting or referring to.
Okay, now, Orison, I've just disturbed you. You were marking a pile of essays here in your office in Waterford Institute of Technology. When you're marking work, what is it you're looking out for? What is the hallmark of a really excellent piece of academic writing? What tells you this is an A, this is good stuff?
I tell you what tells me. Well, it's a mixture of things. First of all, it's easy familiarity with the content, with the knowledge. They know the authors, they know the ideas. So there's a pure, simple, material references and quotes and names and ideas and theories. But that's only the beginning. What is really indicative of quality is the ability to synthesize ideas, to, for example, to compare two authors in a sentence rather than say what one said and then what the other said. But to say, well, even though Jordan says this, Moran goes further when he says this. Or even though Murphy makes this point, Wall disagrees, and I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
I see. So you're not just stating views, you're playing with them, playing one off against the other, disagreeing with bits, finding compromises, that sort of thing?
Yes, you're saying someone goes too far. Are you saying you agree with someone, or someone makes sense, or something that someone says is in alignment with your experience in practice, for instance?
Okay, what about the actual structure of the piece, the way that it's set out with an introduction, a main body, conclusions, bibliography? Would that encourage you to give a high mark given certain things being present in the work?
Oh yes, of course, because you need to have the simple things right. You need to have those things of style automatically. Things like grammar and layout. These are a given. These are assumed. I'm going beyond those basics. These are, at the bottom of it, of course.
Now, when you say style, what sort of style should the writer be cultivating to look like good academic writing?
A sort of you need to bear in mind that academic writing is public writing. And when you communicate in public, when you're making a speech or when you're making a talk, you don't speak in quite the exact same way as you would at home around the kitchen table. So there's a certain formality about the writing.
Sometimes it looks to me slightly pompous when you read journal articles.
Well, some of them do go over the top, I admit. And some people confuse academic writing with pompous writing or with complicated obfuscation and the use of big words.
Like obfuscation.
Yes, exactly. These sesquipedalian words. I don't agree with that. Good academic writing is also clearly understandable. Now, of course, it may use jargon words, but jargon words are only words which the audience and the writer share. So it is not a lack of communication by using a word like constructivism or epistemology or whatever.
Okay, well, we're coming now to the end. Perhaps you could give our academic writers a few tips on how to go about the process of academic writing. Just a few golden rules for doing good quality academic writing for assessment purposes.
Well, the first thing is to be clear about what points you need to make and have them bulleted or written down or some idea. And then this can be done randomly first. The main thing about academic writing is to realise that it's not a one-step process. You don't just write academic writing. Academic writing is always, always, always rewriting. You write it as best you can first, but then you go back over it and over it and over it many times, 3 or 4 times, each time saying, what point am I making, what's my argument, what's my reasoning, what's my support of my point.
Now, in the days of computers and word processors, that's not a difficult thing to do, to produce several drafts of a piece before you're happy with the final version.
Oh yes, I mean, what I say to students is, if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing badly.
How do you mean it's worth doing badly? That seems a bizarre thing to say, Orison.
Well, it's always easier to rewrite than to write. It's always easier to cut pieces or to tidy a thing up than to start with a blank page. A blank page can be a bit intimidating.
So you start with something that's not very good, but it's at least it's done, at least it's on paper or on the screen, and then you can refine it. Is that the idea?
Yes, you can say things, you can have, there are several tricks. Some people write an imaginary letter to a friend saying, Dear Mary, I'm writing this article about this topic. At the moment my thoughts are this, and I think this is the case, and I think this because this is this. And once you're going, you're going. And later on, you can go back and make it more formal.
Okay. Well, one final tip, and then we'll finish. Final tip on doing good quality academic writing.
Write early, write often, and then tidy it up.
Thanks very much, Orison Carlile.